Good morning. It is Monday, March 30th, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 24 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage, where the strategic landscape of the Middle East has reached its most critical juncture since the start of the conflict. Following the definitive expiration of the 5-day military reprieve, the region has transitioned into a period of high-intensity kinetic operations. Reports from regional monitors and the Israeli Defense Forces confirm that a fresh wave of coordinated airstrikes targeted Iranian command centers and weapons sites across Tehran and several port cities near the Strait of Hormuz. This escalation occurs as Iran's parliament speaker warned that the Revolutionary Guard is prepared to retaliate against any potential United States ground intervention, which the Pentagon has reportedly been preparing for as thousands of Marines arrive in the region. Amidst this rising violence, the humanitarian crisis has deepened, with the total number of displaced persons across Lebanon and the Levant now exceeding 1.2 million, prompting urgent calls from the G7 for an immediate cessation of attacks on civilian infrastructure.
Transitioning from the front lines of conflict to the broader global economy, the narrative is being driven by a profound sense of uncertainty as the world grapples with the largest energy disruption in modern history. Crude oil prices, which had moderated during the brief diplomatic window, have surged back toward the $100 per barrel mark following the resumption of hostilities. The OECD, in its interim economic outlook released late last week, has maintained a global growth projection of 2.9% for 2026, while warning that a sustained spike in energy prices could hit growth by 0.5% by next year. This volatility is complicating the efforts of advanced economies to manage a soft landing, as the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz continues to halt nearly 20% of global petroleum consumption and LNG supply. Consequently, nations like India and Egypt are now hosting urgent quadrilateral summits to explore any remaining diplomatic pathways to prevent a total global economic contraction.
In the realm of finance, all eyes are on the credit markets as they process the implications of a prolonged wartime economy and record sovereign debt levels. Global debt has now officially surpassed $315 trillion, representing over 330% of world GDP, a figure that is causing significant anxiety among institutional investors. This mounting debt burden is being exacerbated by the dual pressures of increased defense spending and the massive capital requirements of the artificial intelligence transition. On Wall Street, financial strategists are closely monitoring the 10-year Treasury yield, which remains elevated as investors demand a higher risk premium for long-term assets amidst sticky energy inflation. Furthermore, the financial sector is bracing for the impending leadership transition at the Federal Reserve this May, as market participants seek clarity on how the new administration will balance the necessity of controlling inflation against the risk of stifling a fragile recovery.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus remains on the rapid build-out of AI infrastructure following the landmark GTC 2026 conference. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang has reframed data centers as AI factories, projecting that global investment in this infrastructure will reach approximately $1 trillion as the industry scales from model training to large-scale inference. To meet this demand, NVIDIA has unveiled its Vera Rubin architecture, which promises significant performance gains over the current Blackwell generation. Major cloud providers, including Google Cloud, have already announced the integration of these new Blackwell and Rubin platforms to support a new class of real-time, multimodal AI agents. However, this growth continues to face a physical power ceiling, with hyperscalers now exploring direct investments in modular nuclear reactors and liquid cooling as standard requirements to sustain the 92 gigawatts of additional electricity required by next year.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, currently facing their most severe stress test since the pandemic. The Strait of Hormuz remains in a state of near paralysis, with commercial traffic having plummeted by 90% since the conflict began. This blockade has forced every major ocean carrier, including Maersk, MSC, and Hapag-Lloyd, to officially suspend transits and reroute vessels around the Cape of Good Hope. This detour adds up to 14 days to voyage times and has triggered a massive spike in air freight rates as shippers scramble for alternatives for high-value cargo. Logistics providers are warning that even if a ceasefire is reached soon, the ripple effects on port capacity and container availability in hubs like Jebel Ali and Salalah will be felt for months. As a result,
72% of trade professionals have now prioritized the adoption of AI-driven inventory positioning to mitigate the $3 billion weekly cost increment associated with this great reroute. That concludes our global briefing for today. Thank you for joining us.